My guest this week featured in UKF's One to Watch in 2022. Since then, he's played at Warehouse Project, Lab 11, been supported on BBC Radio 1 by the likes of Skream and Jaguar, and had releases on 140. So it's fair to say that UKF were right, and it sounds like he's only just getting started. It's Adam Harper, aka Ghoulish. How's it going, fella?
Easy, mate. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm well. It's a bit wet and miserable. Had a bit of a hectic week, to be honest with you. But I'm now off work for like the next 5 days. I've got loads of holiday to use at the end of the year. I've just booked off random days, so I'm going to be chilling for the next 5 days, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's what we love to hear. I'm in the same boat, you know. I do actually. I've got like 5 days, so like a week off. I need to book. Yeah. I'm like, when should I use it? When should I? I'm figuring
I've done for like literally. I got to the end of the year and I was just like, I literally had like 11 days left, or like 12, like something mad that was like basically like at the start of November. I was like, right, I can't just book all of Christmas off or everything. So I've just taken loads of Thursdays and Fridays off. So it's just like I just keep having long weekends every weekend. So I should actually be nice and relaxed. But to be honest with you, I've been a bit uptight and stressed at the moment. But it is what it is. We move. It's just life, isn't it? The world's fucked at the moment. It's pretty mad. So you can't really help everything else that's going on with it. You just got to roll with the punches. Looking ahead, obviously, we're talking in November time. Have you got any big bookings for the big old New Year's Eve at all coming up?
Well, I've got one. I was potentially coming through. I got a message last night, so fingers crossed. I think it'd be Manchester, which is good. I did one last year. It was a bit of a strange one. Played like a bit of an awkward time at a bit of an odd venue. Like it's not a bad venue. It's just it's in Trafford Park. A bit weird. Trafford
Park.
Hoping this year we've got
was it
one
the big
in
warehouse one? Like not big warehouse, but it's in a warehouse, like where they do all the boxing and stuff as well.
No, it wasn't that. It was Six Trees, which is like a microbrewery, but just like
yeah, of course. Yeah, Rich Reason from Hit and Run on one of the first episodes, and I think he did one of his like last couple of Hit and Run shows there, and they're supposed to be quite good. Like, but you said it's like a microbrewery that's got actually a pretty decent outside sort of like covered area in like for raves and stuff, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's just in a weird area. Like we were just like, that's so weird. It was cool as fuck. I was like, this is just weird though.
Yeah. And so, I don't think I've got anything really for New Year's Eve. Like, it's a bit of a mad one. Like, people we've had on the podcast before and even like mates, it's quite difficult. There's a lot of pressure, isn't there, on New Year's Eve? I know it's like a stereotype or a bit of a meme, but a lot of pressure to have like a really big time on that day. And
I don't care for it, me, to be honest. I go to a
pantomime
with family usually. No, I just go to a pantomime with family and just get pissed.
Because it's just you go to a pantomime every New Year's Eve? That's quite wholesome.
Yeah, because basically like a little niece and stuff like that, and but my family's it's not big, but it's like kind of a medium-sized family. Yeah, and, like we'll bring like my sister's stepdaughter, my niece, and stuff like that, and we all just go to a pantomime, then watch it. We have a few beers, good laugh, the kids have a good time, and I go home. And if it played a show, cool. If not, I just have a few drinks with my family or go see my mates.
So if we were sort of, because there'll be lots of people listening to this podcast that come from like different musical backgrounds, and like they might be into like drum and bass, or they might be into like other like music, or maybe not into like electronic music at all. How would you sort of describe your sound or describe your sort of production to people that were listening?
It's a bit of a strange one because like I wouldn't really like, I've kind of been like bagged in with like the garage a lot, which is great because I absolutely adore garage. But I wouldn't just say that I do garage. I kind of like all music, and it's the thing like so. I would just say it's just UK like dance music, to be honest, because I don't want to be like, oh, I'm garage, because like I play a set and I've definitely got ADHD or something, because I'll go from garage to like techno to like drum and bass and to dubs. It goes all over the show. Somehow I make it work, and that's like what I like doing. And when in my own production, even though like a lot of the stuff I'm doing right now is like predominantly garage, I still try and like bring all my other influences from music that I really like into it. So it's like a bit of a melting pot, really, of the UK sound, I'd like to say.
Yeah, I get that. A lot of people won't necessarily pigeonhole themselves, because, like you said, if you say you're just one music and then people come to see you doing that and you're like spreading around, then they might feel obviously like they've been sort of like cheated. You might feel cheated because you don't want to be like, I'm not just playing one type of genre, or I'm not taking one type of music. So I respect that, like, and totally understand why people want to do that. So if you were to sort of like talk about the origins of like music in your life, so whether that was sort of like earliest raves growing up, if that was sort of like music that was on around the house, if you remember seeing like first albums you were listening to at school or anything like that, where was sort of like your roots in the music industry?
So it's kind of mad. I didn't really have like that much of a musical upbringing. Like no one's musical in my family. My mum and dad just kind of liked the radio. My dad was like into like classical rock and like AC/DC and stuff like that. And my mum was big into like disco.
Dad rock style.
Yeah, proper like dad rock. And then I think I really started like getting into music probably just before high school. So like year 7. So I was like 11, 12. And I got a letter through the door before I went to high school. It was like, do you want to play an instrument? So I was like, don't know why. I was just like, yeah, I fancy playing the drums and guitar. I'm shit at guitar. I can't play guitar for shit. But drums, I did really well in. I started like doing like jazz drumming and then like
Mm-hmm.
rock drumming and metal drumming, and that was like a big influence to me. So for like out like 11, 12 to like 18, I was drumming, but like around about 16, I really just started getting into DJing, and the big reason for that was because when I was like 11, 12, 13, I obviously discovered like YouTube and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I found like Avicii making Dancing in My Head, which is like a remix for, I can't remember who it was for, but he did a remix, and I was like, how the hell, this is amazing. He did like a whole studio breakdown. I was like infatuated by that. And then I watched a Tomorrowland 2012 after movie, and that was like, whoa. But then from there, I discovered like dubstep and the harder stuff like Skrillex. And then I found Ozla, which is Skrillex's label, and they did like loads of after films, and that really was like, I want to do that. And it's just like, I don't know why. I was like, I want to do that. That is so cool. So I kind of started like discovering production like from like 12, 13. Wasn't producing, but I was like aware of it.
Yeah.
And like 16, I picked up GarageBand / Logic.
Yeah.
And I just started messing around. And then it was just like from there, going from like, I think it started off on like house, dubstep, like the bro step stuff, like rhythm.
Yeah.
Did like a lot of like trap. And then basically from like 18 to like 20, 21, I was really into like heavy dubstep.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I started building my Ghoulish alias through that, and that's kind of like why I stepped into the garage scene with like quite a few thousand followers, because I was doing like heavy dubstep.
Right.
But I felt like I
okay.
love with that.
Right. It's interesting when that, because like to go that way round, where there's a couple of, I'm trying to think now. I was about to say there's a couple of artists that do it, but I don't want to say that and then not be able to think off the top of my head. But where you sort of like were saying about EDM and bro step and that sort of like American sort of side of like the bass sounds. And then sort of transitioning into a lighter sound. It's interesting to go that way round. Oh God, pardon me. Sorry. It's interesting to go that way round as opposed just belch off screen. Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about that. It's interesting to go that way round as like sort of mellowing out slightly, if you could call it mellowing out, where you're sort of like lower BPM, sort of like lower sort of intensity, because obviously like that American bro step sound and everything that was like front case and everything like that was quite hard and quite heavy and stuff. To then sort of like take it a bit more mellow and sort of bring the BPM down a little bit, and to sort of like do it that way and still have success is interesting. Did you find that there was much of a fall off with like your followers at the time, or like following, or did most people sort of like transition with you in that sound?
Oh no, it was actually the opposite. More people started to actually like me more, even though it was all like, because like when I was doing like heavy dubstep, I mean, I'm still into like metal and like hardcore and stuff like that. A lot of like the aesthetics and like music style was very like intense and dark and stuff like that. And it was mad because I feel like the reason I probably carried on a lot more people is because people could hear that I was probably having more fun making garage. And that's the thing. Like, I'm big into like sound design and stuff like that. Still am. Still like trying to like do good mix downs, and that's like a whole other topic. But I really did find that a lot of the dubstep fans were like, oh, it's actually really cool. And then a lot of people, especially a lot of the UK dubstep artists that was doing that rhythm, they've actually started to actually prefer this sort of stuff rather than the old stuff, which I'm happy for, because to be honest, listening back to my old stuff, it was pretty like, it just wasn't somewhat right with it. And when I was like writing tunes, it took me like 3 or 4 months to write a tune. And that was like such a massive indicator that it wasn't for me. But I was always like in the background mixing garage, mixing house, and like all the UK like centric genres like grime and stuff, and it just made sense. Like after this like a year or 2 period where I basically had like a breakdown of like, what the hell am I doing with music? I was like, why don't I just not do that? And then literally within the first 2 tracks that I released, it kind of just went like wildfire with the garage stuff. So it was really cool, really, to be honest, because it's just kind of skyrocketed in the last year and a half of me.
That's sick. Like
it's weird.
The last episode that we had Opidan on it. Do you know her? Like,
oh yeah, she's cracking.
Yeah, wicked. So we were talking about sort of garage and different scenes and different genres. So she lives down in Bristol, when we were talking about drum and bass and how there's like a lot of purists down there and a lot of people that really, really are into the music and might be sort of slightly, with a pinch of salt, narrow-minded in like, you have to like this type of drum and bass, or like this type of drum and bass is wank, or this type of da-da-da-da. And we were speaking about how garage seems to be one of the few sort of genres where everyone sort of, like, she was like, it's fun to make and the crowd want to have fun. They're not there to sort of be like, oh, do you know this tune? Like, this is the wrong type of garage, or this is the wrong type of thing there. And I was like, yeah, like we were having a discussion about it, and it's like one of those industries and that scenes, everything that's going on with like Kiwi, everything that's going on with like 140 and all the other sort of labels that are going out there, like putting out new garage and stuff, seem to be like all the DJs. And when you watch the crowd and everything, it's like, it was actually quite an open-minded and welcoming scene. and welcoming sort of shows, and everyone wants to have fun as opposed to standing there at the back like nodding your head, like not even moving, sort of like, oh yeah, I know this tune, or like, you know, like this is that. So it's quite interesting that obviously when you moved over to that industry and moved on over to that genre, that people were accepting of it and were like, cool, and like, oh yeah, sick, this is a new sound, but like we're going to go with it, and like, everyone's like that, as opposed to like potentially in some of the genres you might get people being like, oh well, this isn't what he was originally making, or like this isn't as good as this genre, so I'm not going to follow it. So
yeah, exactly.
it's interesting to sort of see that, and it's quite a positive thing in the music industry, because obviously there can be a lot of like negative things in there sometimes, and so to actually be like, oh, this scene is it's thriving and it's open-minded and it's inclusive and welcoming of new people, and like the vibe like is great, and like the people are just trying to have a good time, as opposed to being like a music type snob.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing about it. That's the thing I found like really interesting, because like you say, drum and bass dubstep shows, you go into like a drum and bass or dubstep show, all you're going to expect is drum and bass and dubstep. Whereas you go to like these garage raves, they might be quote unquote a garage rave. You're not just going to hear garage all night. This is what I really like about the scene. So like when I do a set, like I say, I'm quite versatile, and like a lot of the DJs that I'm watching and like a lot of people that I support and stuff like that, no one's playing like a full garage set, because without sounding like an idiot or a dick or anything, it's not that fun to mix one genre as a DJ anyway. I don't find it. Maybe obviously some people will, but for me personally, no. So what I find like really cool is like, yeah, like everyone kind of unifies in garage, because I feel like maybe it's just where it sits in like the sort of energy range. It's like the perfect cross section from like down tempo to like the harder stuff, but also you have like some of the harder stuff in that like BPM genre,
so like
let's say.
Obviously, you've got like a UK funky that you could bring into it. You, like you said, you mentioned there the darker side, so you've got people like LB or stuff like old source or classic garage, where it's actually quite dark and bits. But then you can obviously mix in commercial, and then the one thing that garage obviously really lends itself to is like a lot of bootlegs. That people are bootlegging like pop tunes and bootlegging bits and pieces. You can sort of mix it in, and sort of there's quite a diverse genre to be able to like mix in different bits and pieces. And like you said, then it sort of keeps the crowd on their toes. Having said that, the one thing that I do remember in my head, and obviously it's wicked. Obviously now people like yourselves, Conductor, like Sammy Virgin, everyone that are coming through and sort of making this new wave of garage. Like when I was at uni in like 2013, 14, went to like garage events. So this was just before like so I remember Skepsis was like doing some of his first shows and stuff when we were at that thing. So it's like before like the new period of bassline, and UK bass had its like sort of second income, and it was like that. Garage Nation shows, like we'd go there and they would literally like you'd listen to the same set basically for like 6 hours. I don't want to throw any DJs under the bus, but there was this period of time where like there wasn't necessarily lots of new garage being made around that sort of period, and it was probably just before like 2016 when like new wave of garage and new KG and everything like that was being made again. But so they were just playing the same sort of like 200 tracks in every single set, and it was like people like going to Garage Nation, but you'd go to one show and you'd be like, I'm never going to that again because I don't need to, because they're just all playing the most like BBC Radio 1 sort of garage tunes into there. And like I don't want to throw any like DJs under the bus, but they were like really, really big DJs. You'd be like, you guys haven't spoke at all obviously before your sets, and obviously like if you go to any other shows, it's like, right, you wouldn't play the headliners tracks if you were supporting them or whatever, because there was like no sort of headliners there, and it was just all people that play garage, but there wasn't any new garage at the time. It was just like you were seeing the same thing over and over and over again, and it was like, oh, that's dead. So it is now wicked, like I said, you boys and girls and everyone else that are coming through that are making sort of like this new UKG, and sort of like some of it's minimal, some of it's really dark, some of it lends itself to like house, some of it lends itself to like UK funky or two-step or stuff like that. It's wicked to see obviously a lot of variety in there, and then you can do some bits and pieces, obviously like go totally left field, finishing on drum and bass. I know obviously like interplanetary, fuck me, I can't even say his word, interplanetary. Why can't I say the word?
IPC, say IPC.
Yeah, IPC, Interplanetary Criminal is finishing his all of his sets on like Donk and everything at the moment, obviously like speeding it up and like and finishing bits and pieces. So those little fresh bits now that are coming into sets does mean, like you said, that garage sets aren't the same at all now, regardless of who you're going to see. It's wicked to see that, and it keeps it fresh and it keeps it lively, and it just helps the scene grow, doesn't it?
Yeah, massively. I mean, it's just like, I think that's why I'm so like I love the garage scene so much. It's because it's not just a garage scene. It's just, I just call it like a music scene now. It's just like I just call it, like I said, I don't really want to say, oh, like it's just a garage scene. It's just a UK club scene, and I feel like the UK scene in general is, unlike the sort of UK sound, is super like unified. Like everyone like kind of supports each other. There's no beef or anything like that. You might have an odd few people that like won't see eye to eye or whatever, but from like, there's no bother. It's just like make music, have a bit of a laugh, and that's it. Because that's all it is at the end of the day. It's making music, like have a bit of a laugh. It shouldn't be too serious. Have a bit of fun, and when it like, you can hear it in the tracks, you can hear it on the DJ sets when people are having fun and they're putting like what they love into like their art. I think that's what appeals to like a lot of people to the sound. Like you say, you go to a gig, people are like, oh, you can tell the DJ's having fun, so we're gonna have fun, and it's just, and I feel that's like the whole like vibe throughout the UK community, to be honest.
Yeah, it's very difficult. The amount of times that I've seen, like, if you see a DJ really having fun on stage, like giving it beans, jumping around, like having a laugh, as long as they're not like too fucked up and they're literally just genuinely having a good time. It's very rare to see the whole crowd stood there like, no, not enjoying the night. Where they will just vibe off of what they're giving it to them, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. You obviously, anyone, like, even if you go to a rave or you go to a gig or you go to a show, you've paid money, you want to have a good time. Like if you go to a comedy event or stuff like that, you want to laugh at the comedians. Like you're there basically waiting for it to have a good time, aren't you? So it's it's a positive atmosphere to be in. Where does the name come from for Ghoulish?
Do you know what, mate? I don't know. Like everyone's asked me this, but the only memory I have, right, was I sat in my room. I must be about 16. And I really liked this DJ at the time called Gassy. He was like an American bass house DJ. I was like, that's a really cool name. And I've always liked, I don't know why, I've always liked how a G and a H flow together.
Okay.
Weird, really. And I was just like, Ghoulish. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. And then I told a few people, like, that's kind of a cool name, actually. I was like, do you think? Yeah. I still don't think it is, but a few people have got a really cool
you've got, like,
DJ
a lot of
name.
the stuff like Grim Reaper and a lot of stuff that's sort of like around there. So it does fit into like a flow, like something that's quite dark and other bits and pieces and stuff like that. And it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem that I had though was I had like a bit of like an identity crisis, like I said, when I was going from dubstep to like the more UK club stuff, because I was like, is Ghoulish a bit dark? But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. Like you literally have DJs and producers called like Ross from Friends and stuff like that.
There's a weird era of that. Yeah, there's a weird era of like, not weird, but it's obviously like subjective. But there's like, I feel like there's the era of like 3 or 4 years, like 4 or 5 years ago, where there was, like you said, Ross. I don't want to throw any other like mention. Well, there's like Ross from Friends, DJ Seinfeld, like all these other random sort of like mad names where it's just like, wow, okay, this is a bit different. But obviously, a name is just a name, really, in it, because if someone gets successful enough or bigger enough, you sort of don't really think about the meaning behind the name, do you? You just associate those words with that person. But when you do like look into band names and you think of stuff like that, and you're like, oh, the Smiths, and you're like, oh, well, that was cool for like the time and where they were from in Manchester and like sort of what it meant and what they represented and stuff. And then there's stuff where like there's a comedian that does like a little segment on it. I don't want to steal someone's material, but basically saying like some band names are fucking stupid and like you wouldn't think they're good, but because they're popular and successful, you don't think twice about it. It's a bit different. I didn't know if it could.
That's the big thing.
We'll get onto this now because that's all right. So I didn't know, because obviously you've got a bit of a relationship now with Mr. Rolly Jones. He's been repping your music. Saw him at Warehouse Project, bit of a collab together. So I didn't know whether there was a link there between like Ghoulish and Skream, because obviously Skream is like, it sounds like Skream, a little bit dark, a little bit gothic and whatever. And then you're like Ghoulish. I was like, you're not going to lean into it like at all for like an EP name? Maybe the next EP name you could have Ghoulish.
No, I think I've not even done an EP yet, but the EP that I do want to do is probably going to be like way different from what I'm doing now, to be honest. So,
okay. What different music you mean, or?
Well, because the thing is, like, I've been talking about this a lot on like social media, so it's not like a hidden thing. But I do want to like sort of lean into like my product, like, cause I feel like I'm quite a strong producer, and I feel like sometimes because I'm rushing through like making speed garage and club ready tracks, I want to try and like spend a bit more time making maybe something a bit more. I don't know, like I like immersive music, so like when I listen to like Joy Orbison and Floating Points and Fortet and all them, there's something. It's probably not inherently mental, but it's like there's something more to the music I find than just like club ready tracks, which I'm not saying club ready tracks are bad, but I feel like for me personally, my favorite sort of music is something that you can play in the club, listen to at home, and then like it's like the perfect cross section of them too. You get what I mean? Yeah. So it'd be like you can listen to it at home and be like, this is so cool, and like have like a different sort of like perspective on it, but then like listen to it in the club and it's a complete different vibe. Like I saw Over Mono at Warehouse, and through their tracks, like they're a bit vibey. Like you hear him in the club, it's like, this is awesome. Like, what the hell? I kind of want to like play into that a bit, and I think that would mean like not shifting genres or styles per se, but shifting into like a bit of a more refined sound that's not just going to be for one environment, let's say. That obviously just
takes a lot more time. No, it's not pretentious at all, mate. I totally understand what you mean. Like tracks like Ellipsis by like Joy Orbison and like Parallel 7 and stuff by Fortet, stuff where you're like, this is a vibe, but if you drop it into the middle of a set, it's sort of like, you could obviously easily drop any of those into like a garage set and the crowd would hopefully go with you. But I do get what you mean. A bit more emotive, a bit more of something where that's probably taken, I mean, I don't know if it does or not, but takes slightly longer to be in production because you're going back and forth and you're like, right, how does this make me feel? You might have to come back to those tracks and be like, because you might like get like not be able to see the trees between the woods, and like actually be like, is this the right type of thing? And I do get if you've got a club set coming up and you're like, right, I want to get a new dub, or I just want to get a new refix, or like a something just so I can play it out and do it there, and then it's done and it's popular. But you, like you said, if you yourself want to feel happy and content with something that can be taken in the club, like listen to it at home, vibing, whatever. It's rare, and it takes a lot more time to, I think, to craft that type of sound and that type of tune to be able to sort of like have those classics where, like you said, like like anything like by Bodica, Joy Orbison, Forte, anything that's a bit more sort of like deeper, and it's definitely going to take a little bit longer to create.
But I think the thing is too, is like a perfect segue. I think because like right now, I feel like obviously what I'm doing is I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing. I like when I try and talk about this, I'm not going like I hate garage or I hate clubbies. It's not that. Yeah. It's like I love that, but I want something that I can go like obviously because I want to put my first body of work out. I want to be like I want to be really really proud of it. So I want to be like, well, I'm actually really happy with this, and I want it to just be like sort of like amalgamation of all like the stuff I love. So like I'm hoping it's just like like I say the perfect cross section between danceable and like a bit of a vibe because. That's what I love. Like listening to, like, say, for Hopped On, listen to the new Over Mono tune. It's a bit like not what you expect, but it's like this is vibe. I really like this. Like, so I'm trying to like tap into that a little bit. But the hard thing is because working full time and DJing a lot, and it's like you're balancing so much. It's like you don't really get all the time in the world to produce. So that's the only thing that I'm really struggling with.
You've got to be in the right headspace, especially if you're going to take a jump or a leap of faith as well. You've got to be in the right headspace to obviously put some time and put some hours into it. You don't want to rush it and stuff like that. And obviously, like I know we joked about saying that, like I don't want it to sound pretentious at all. Like music is number one is like absolutely subjective. Subjective. The only objective thing is literally like stream numbers and followers, and that's like only because it's literally like a number that you can actually count. Everything else is just people's opinion, isn't it? There's no like sort of right or wrong to it. And number two as well, like obviously as an artist or as a band or anything. You are absolutely 100% entitled to do whatever the fuck you want with your music, haven't you? Like even bands like Arctic Monkeys and other people that have obviously changed their sound and changed their style from like over years and years and years. They're not in the wrong, even though some people might be like, I don't really like this or I don't really vibe this anymore. It's like, well, their old music is still there for you to listen to. Like personally, I'm not a massive fan of like, the new Arctic Monkeys album, but used to listen to them all the time and like absolutely rinse it when I was younger. But it's like that's fine. It's just not for me anymore. They're trying a new sound. That's cool. That's calm. Like it's just something that's different enough. It doesn't sort of like nobody has the right to be like this is shit or this is wank. It's like, well, if the artist wants to do it, they're doing it. That's the same artist that you loved before. So that's is just their progression now. It's
for sure. I mean, I've been sort of like toying and showing a few people, or quite a few people actually, the stuff that I've been wanting to make. And everyone's like, this is way better than what you're doing now. I'm like, well, that's a good sign. I think, when I say way better, I don't think they mean like, it's what you're doing now is shit or anything. But I think it's just because what everyone's always said, it's like, it's when you listen to it, it's like, that is definitely you. Yeah. Because I'm like, what stuff I like it's pretty, like say Joy Orbison, Floating Points, Forte, Bonobo. I love that stuff. And to me, if I can like sort of have my own sort of like take on that sound and like the dance stuff that I absolutely love too. That'll just be me being like the happiest artist in the world. Like, yes, I finally done it. I don't care if no one likes it. It's just like, I'm happy with it now. So
yeah, and it's sort of like you said, it's having the confidence to be able to swing naturally and as you want between different genres and different bits and pieces. Like you said, not even like it's not even necessarily like a time thing with the likes of like Joy Orbison and Forte and stuff. Like they've definitely like obviously collabed and worked with like drum and bass producers before and worked with like tech, like you said, techno, like really hard like Berghain and like German sort of techno people, brought it back to like the UK sound and stuff like that, and everyone still supports them every time, and they're not like, oh, they've changed their sound or they've changed what they're doing here. It's like, well, they're just doing what they necessarily want to do, which is I think that's a big thing too. Like
I was telling my mate this, like say I always like panic over stuff like this. I'm like, I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm always like, I'm scared of like to take a step sometimes. My mate said like, listen, look at some of the best artists in the world. Not saying I'm on that level, but he's like, look at Tyler Creator and Kanye West. Like every single album, they've changed style, and it's always been like sort of in their colloquial sound of them being the artist. Or that they might like stay from the past of what they did last time, but it's still very much them. And I think that's what people like. And that's, as me as like a listener, when I listen to like my favorite artist, like I go back for their old stuff that I really liked. I'm like, oh my God, you can hear the progression and like you're at like A to Z. It's like, this is great. And I think a lot of people, after chatting with mates and stuff who are just fans, they're like, yeah, that's what we love about artists. We've seen them go from like, go from like dubstep, like post dubstep, like Joy Orbison, to like the more like sort of laid back, stripped back stuff he's doing now. It's like, it makes sense. It's kind of like a natural progression rather than being like stagnant, because I'd get bored of an artist just putting out like, Hive Mungo all the time. Which
of course. And like even like we were talking about him earlier, like Mr. Ollie Jones, like starting off like doing the dubstep bits. Then he had a tiny little alias as like Mr. Keys and was doing literally like grime instrumentals and bits and pieces like that. Then went back to sort of like the bro steppy sound, the American sound. Then obviously finished that with Magnetic Man and himself, and went into the disco period of doing bits and pieces like the Red Bull Music Academy, Boiler Room and bits and pieces like that. And then going all the way back through to obviously now like tech and like house and like minimal and other stuff like that, and still being able to sort of keep it. I saw like he's doing a post about, is it like Screamism 8 that's going to be coming out soon and stuff like that. So that'd be interesting to sort of see what's going to be coming out on that. I do like, there was one of my biggest things. So obviously this is like a podcast where we rewind that track and stuff like that. So I interviewed Ollie in a toilet cubicle about 2-3 years ago, and there was like, it was a really good video. It was very messy and very open and honest, but we got like a 20-25 minute interview with him. I was going there, it was like we're going there to do a interview. I can't remember the name of the club now, but it was in Lincoln, and he was doing like a 2-hour set, and we chatted to him loads beforehand. We're like, well, we'll shoot this video, and he's like, oh, let's try to do something interesting. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So he came up with the idea of like him sitting on the toilet in a toilet cubicle, me standing in there with him, like interviewing him on the mic and like taking a video and everything like that. And then it was a really good video online, but it could only start for 2 weeks. Then I got an email on Monday morning basically being like, yeah, I've had some interesting feedback about this video, so do you mind if we take it down? I was like, oh no, like it was one of my proudest bits of work to date, and it was so funny. But yeah, it was being very open and honest in the videos, and like talking about Stellar Sessions and all the other bits and pieces before, and I was like, fuck. I'd love to be able to put that back up again, but yeah, that was jokes times with it. To go back to something that's sort of like funny playing live and like a bit mad, what's been the worst thing that's happened to you while playing live? You can be as open and honest or as brutally honest as you like.
Like, I'm like 23, and everyone says I look about 18. Like every time I play with someone new, like, how old are you? I'm like 23. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. What? And I remember I was like, I must have been about 19 at the time, and I was opening for Hatcher and Casper in Manchester, and I got pulled off the stage by security. Like, he was like, what are you doing? I was like, read your ID. I was like, what? And he's like, you're not old enough. And I was like, yeah, I am. And I got my ID out of the driving license. Like, mate, yeah, I am. And he's like, what the fuck? And like, that's probably about the extent of it. Nothing really too drastic happened, mate, to be honest. Not yet, anyway.
That reminded me of what we were talking about before this podcast as well. So we're both part of a very exclusive, selective gang, the Grey Fox gang, where we've both been turning grey before the age of like fucking 25 for our lives. And you mentioned you were starting to turn the grey when you were like, what, 15, 16?
14.
14, that's pretty early. I was about 16. Like, I'm wearing a hat at the moment. My hair's fucked at the moment, so I'm not going to take it off. On camera, you don't look like you're particularly that grey, but obviously when there's like lighting or when there's stuff like there, like it is pretty serious. Like, I've seen a couple of photos of you, and I was like, oh yeah, he has got loads of grey hairs. I have as well. Fully embraced it, like absolutely fully embraced it now. It's different, it's wicked, but it does, like you were talking about there, if you've got a baby face, but are starting to go grey and stuff like that, it will really mess with people's heads and be like, well, I can't really work out what age this guy is.
It's mad because like in sunlight, especially like obviously summer sunlight, it's different sort of sunlight, it is like so grey. It's like I've got loads of photos on my phone of just me like with a beard, like sitting in my garden. And you just see all my hair is just really grey. I don't mind it. Like, I'd much rather be going grey than bald, but like, and nothing to go wrong with going bald, but you know, preference.
Well, grey hair you can sort of obviously dye. Bald hair, unless you go over to Turkey and get their hair transplant, it's a bit more tricky to fix overnight.
And I don't really like dyeing my hair. I did it when I was like 18, and I properly looked like an emo. I was dressed in band t-shirts.
I didn't dye my hair until like I've been going grey, and I was like, yeah, it's fine, don't really worry about it. And I recently, I started a new job when I was in 2019, and I was starting at a new place, and it was like quite a big media place. I'm still there now, but I don't really want to mention it or whatever. But went to go, like, literally it was like the week before I started, and it just so like happened that I went to 3 separate shops, and I swear on my life that every single time I went to the cashier, she went, oh, I like your hair. And I was like, oh, thanks. She went, who dyed it? And I was like, no one. It's just natural. I was like, that's weird. Like, it's a compliment, but fine. Literally went into the next shop, which was like TK Maxx, and the same person said it. I was like, what the fucking chance of that? That's weird. Literally went into Tesco, bought something, and the woman said it, and I was like, right, that's it. I've got to dye my hair before I start this new job, because if I start and then like 2 weeks later I dye my hair, it's very obvious that like that bloke's dyed his hair, the new guy that's just started. Whereas if I dye it before I start, no one knows me, no one's done anything there. And then like I dyed my hair, it was darker, and then I remember that like literally like 4 months later we went into lockdown. So I've been like dyeing it, just touching up the beard or whatever. We went into lockdown, and I was like, fuck this, I'm not dyeing my hair, I'm not tinting my beard anymore. Like, I can't be bothered with it, whatever. Come back into the office 18 months later, obviously like my hair is like grey, properly grey, and everyone's like, fucking hell, have you had a stressful lockdown? I was, what's going on? And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, you've got loads of grey hairs. And I was like, oh no, this is just my natural hair. This is just my natural hair. Like I just fucking dyed it the whole time. And then they were like, oh, okay, fair enough, cool.
Mate,
so
happens.
Yeah.
I did it when I went to Bunny Jackson's a few weeks ago. I was meeting a few friends. I was the first one there, and the bouncer's like, who's dyed your hair, mate? I was like, no one. I'm grey. Went, what the fuck's that about? I was like, what do you mean, what's it about that?
Yeah, we just got to embrace it, mate. We should, like, anyone in the music industry, we should have like a support group for like, everyone that's going grey. Who else is it? One Man is definitely like, there's DJs and artists where I used to look at and I was like, yeah, he's got grey hairs and he's not particularly old yet. So I remember One Man being quite grey. I think Artwork has a couple of grey hairs, and there was someone else that was like pretty grey. Maybe Khan. I think Khan like is quite grey as well, like Khan and Neek from Khan and Neek.
I'm pretty sure Neek's dyed his hair grey, if I'm correct. Or is it Khan? I can't remember. One of them's got the grey hair now. But
I think it's Khan, potentially, as it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Loafer's always had pretty grey hair as well.
Yeah.
We're in good stead. We're in good stead in the industry.
I don't mind it, mate. I like it.
What's one thing like it's good to get balance, especially talking on podcasts, and if you're open and honest enough to talk about it and it's not uncomfortable. Like what's one of the worst things about working in the industry? Like obviously people see a lot of the highlight reels, they see the positive side on Instagram, and obviously social media is just like a big a lot of people will post their successes, and it's bigging people up, and it's being sort of like naturally like, look, this is something cool that I'm working on, this is something cool that I'm working on, and it can sort of distort people's receptions of like their actual life or the industry or anything like that. So it's always good to get the balance. And if you feel comfortable talking about it, like what's some of the worst things sort of working in the industry or like playing live or traveling or anything like that?
I think one of the worst things I've experienced, and I don't think it's inherently like a thing that's supposed to be bad, but it's like clicks. I really don't like them. I've never liked them, and I've never really been a part of any of them.
Like clicky groups.
Yeah. Because I've noticed, like, just especially like starting to like quote unquote start getting like a bit of recognition and stuff.
Yeah.
There's definitely clicks, and you sometimes feel like I do anyway, because I'm like literally all my people that I'm like actual friends with are actually my friends. Like I'm not like one of them people just trying to make friends for people in music. Like I'll just be friends with people. I've just noticed there's like an overwhelming amount of people who are just clicker, and like what'll happen is like they'll expect support and stuff like that, and then like they won't ever reciprocate that sort of thing to you. And sometimes like I'm probably just like, probably like an anxiety thing really, but it's like you do feel sometimes like, damn, maybe like people just don't like me and stuff like that, and it's just this like inherent thing that sometimes, because there's a click and you're not a part of it, it's like, oh, have I done something wrong? And that's something I've found a bit of like a thing to traverse, and I feel like it's more of an anxiety thing rather than like facts, because obviously people gravitate towards each other and stuff like that. That's completely normal, but I've just noticed, especially like just say getting a bit more recognition, is like you just start like sort of traversing the scene. You sort of see like who's with who, and sometimes you can just feel like a bit, oh God, maybe I'm not a part of something, and you can feel a bit like alienated, especially like being a bit.
So
I
won't ask you to like mention. I won't ask you to mention like obviously anyone's name in particular or anything like that. But do you mean sort of clicks within literally like the garage genre, or is it people that are on sort of like maybe the same label, or is it people that are sort of from the same city where you're like, oh, like trying to be really nice, like backstage or whatever, and they're like, yeah, sort of fuck off, like I'm not chatting to you type of thing, or is it?
It's not really. It's not so cutthroat like, oh, it's like a fuck off thing. It's more like just like again, it's sort of not even just like one particular, it's a whole industry wide thing. You'll have like clicks and stuff like that. And sometimes you can feel like, oh, like people really like me. Then other times you can feel like, oh, no one supports me and stuff like that. And obviously sometimes like the people that you want to support you and you've been supported are like, you can just feel like a bit, or maybe they're not seeing it. And that could be like a number of amounts of things like algorithm, just your post not being like just stuff like that. And I think a big thing is like, say this is just personal to me. It's just like, damn, maybe have I done something wrong? But because I keep my head down, I don't really do like anything crazy. I'm pretty much to myself and to chat to people. I was like, nah, it can't be that. It's probably just like me just getting in my own head. And more times than not, it is. But that's something that I've always found, like just the clicks and stuff like that, and groups of just people, not even just like one like scene or one like DJs or anything like that. It's everything in like the music industry can be a bit clicky, and it's a bit intimidating for honestly. And I think that's probably like the scariest thing I've had to traverse really. Everything else has been.
Have you
spoke
to like when you say about like traversing it there, like what's sort of your go-to with sort of getting some closure on that? Have you like sort of spoke to people and been like, oh, it's a bit like I feel sort of like there's a bit of a vibe between us at the moment, or have you sort
of? What? No, because I think it's just again because every time I've thought about it and then like something will just like happen. I was like, oh, that's obviously just not the case. It's just me being anxious. But again, I feel like as being like a fresh person in the scene, it's always an intimidating thing, like trying to tackle like, well, how do I chat to people? And it's just one of them. It's just again, I think it's a weird one. It's so like personal to me that probably not everyone like sees it, and probably like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, what the fuck are you talking about?" Like, you know, you get on with most people in the scene, like, yeah, of course I do, but I could still feel a bit like alienated from everything at times. And like I say, I think that's just the most intimidating thing for me being a part of like the industry is just, yeah, because like it's more like balancing plates, like you know. And I think with recent times, I've just sort of been like, I'm not going to force anything. Like, I'm just going to be myself. Going to just make music and, you know, chat to people. If people chat to me, cool. If not, I'm not going to try and force it, because obviously networking's great and everything, but sometimes trying to force yourself I always say, like, trying to force yourself to sit down at someone else's table is probably the worst thing to do.
Yeah, that's a really good phrase, actually. Like to force yourself to sit down at someone else's table. That's a good analogy. Like you said, and when you have shown that and demonstrate that in the past, like we said, a lot of people might not have had the balls to move over music, literally like move scenes, like move names, like be like, I'm not really feeling this music anymore. Like, no disrespect to it, but I want to try something new. Like, obviously, if people start to get a little bit of success in something, they want to carry on doing that. So to actually like take yourself out of that and be like, oh, it's not really me, and so I'm going to try this new thing, and for it to pay off to you. You've definitely put that into practice with like actually moving across the scene and actually having the confidence and the recognition to go like, oh, I want to try this new thing. Or I want to take myself out of my comfort zone and just take a gamble on this. And obviously it paid off, which is fantastic. Adam, mate, it's been a pleasure to chat to you today. Thanks very much for jumping on and giving us a bit of background and info on your obviously roots, who you're supporting, who you think is obviously some people to check out. Some good advice for obviously upcoming producers and DJs as well, and people in the music scene, and obviously keeping it real as well about potentially some things that are like the worst part of the music scene that affect you.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure, man. Like, yeah, it's just one of them, innit? You know, I'd rather be honest about stuff than talk about things openly, because, you know, people, I think a lot of people suffer with that sort of stuff. But it's just kind of like, oh, it's normal. And that, you know, I wasn't me being like directing at anyone. It's just kind of like,
no,
yeah, you can feel a bit alone at times doing stuff, but also at the same time, you get like a lot of support and this is the best thing ever. And then you go, oh God, I feel rubbish. So that's it. But at the end of the day, music's all fun, and that's the main thing for me. I'm having a lot more fun than any of the downfalls, and the downfalls are very few and far between. Let's put it that way.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure, mate.